We're on the top of Dafayim Beis and Medalef. We start in the Gemara here that goes back to what the Mishnah said. A person shechted his carbon Pesach on Erev Pesach that was Shabbos, but he shechted it Shaloi Lishma. So then the carbon Pesach is puzzled. So therefore he was Mechal Shabbos B'Shegig and he has to bring a carbon Chatas. So the Gemara asks the question, B'mai Askinon? Talking about a sheikh, because it said in the Mishnah, Chayev Chatas. So he thought that it would be mutter to do this, so it was a sheikh. What is the Mishnah speaking about? Are we speaking about a person that made a mistake? He thought it was a different carbon. When he saw this carbon that he brought, so he thought it was a carbon shlamim. So therefore he had in mind that he's bringing it for a carbon shlamim. But really it was a carbon Pesach that he brought for a carbon shlamim. Is that the case? So if so, Shamit Mina, I can prove from this Mishnah, Akira Betos, that if you have the wrong intention when you're bringing a carbon, but it's totally mistakenly, you didn't realize the carbon that you're bringing, Hava Akira, it uproots the status of what the carbon is. That's what you can see over here, if we're going to say that that's what our Mishnah is speaking about. So Tosfos says this is an argument between Amiraim in a Gemara in Menachos, that some I think it's Rava that says that when you have the wrong kavanah for a carbon, only if you intentionally had the wrong kavanah, meaning you knew what the carbon is, and you intentionally had the wrong kavanah, then it uproots the status of the carbon. But if you mistakenly had the wrong kavanah, it doesn't change the status of the carbon. So over here, if we're going to say that our Mishnah is speaking about a person that made a mistake, he thought that it's a carbon Pesach, and that's why, or he thought actually that it's a carbon Shlomim, that is, and that's why he had the wrong kavanah. So it's a Akira B'tos, and we're saying that this uproots the status of the carbon, and he has to bring a carbon Chatas.
And this has no connection with Pigel.
With?
Pigel.
No, we're not talking about Pigel over here. Negate to the Lishma and Shaloi Lishma. I don't think talking about through the kavan of Shaloi Lishma. Does it uproot the status of the carbon? The klal benegate to all karbanis is stama lishma. The stam animal that you bring as a carbon, if you have nothing in mind, it's lishma. It's for the sake of the carbon. So the question is, by having an intention Shaloi Lishma and it uproots that status of the carbon, is it only if you know what the carbon is and you directly and willingly uproot the status of the carbon, or even an akira betos, even if you didn't realize what it is, and that's why you had the wrong intention. So maybe then it doesn't change the status of the carbon. So here in our Mishnah, if we're going to say it's talking about toyeh, I see that it does uproot it. So Elo, so what are you going to tell me in order that it shouldn't be a raya to that and it shouldn't be a question on that Amayra? So I'm going to say ba'oiker. We're talking about a person over here intentionally is taking the carbon, which is a carbon Pesach, and he knows that it's a carbon Pesach, and he's intentionally shechting it shaloi lishma. But he's still going to be chayav achatas because he thinks that this is allowed to be done on Shabbos. He thinks that he can bring this carbon achatas, so he's still considered to be a shogeg. But he knows that it's a carbon Pesach, and he's intentionally thinking that it's for something else, and that's why he's chayav achatas. So now, if that's the case of the reisha, aim eseife, what's the din that it says in the next case of the Mishnah? V'shar kol hazvachim sheshachton l'shuma Pesach, if on Erev Pesach shechol b'Shabbos, you bring any other carbon, for example, a carbon shlomim, and you shecht it for the sake of a carbon Pesach. So what did the Mishnah say? It depends. Im einon re'uyin, if you're using an animal that couldn't have been fit at all for a carbon Pesach, so then chayiv. You'll be chayiv a carbon chatas for what you did. You weren't trying to bring a carbon Pesach. You know, it's clear that this can't be brought for a carbon Pesach, so you're shechting a different carbon, and you're thinking it's for the carbon Pesach, so you're going to be chayiv a carbon chatas. But if it's an animal that is fit to be brought for a carbon Pesach, meaning it's either a sheep or a goat, and it's a year old, it's an animal fit for a carbon Pesach. So then it could be that the person made a mistake. He thought he's bringing a carbon Pesach. He thought he's doing a mitzvah. So Rabbi Eliezer, mechayev chatos. Rabbi Eliezer says you're still going to be chayev chatos, but Rabbi Yeshua, poiter. The Mishnah says Rabbi Yeshua would say you potter, and the reason is because he thought he's bringing a carbon Pesach. He saw an animal, it was really a carbon shlomim, and he thought that it's a carbon Pesach. He thought maybe someone left it there, someone lost it there, and it's really supposed to be a carbon Pesach, because it looks like a carbon Pesach. It's the same animal that's brought for a carbon Pesach. So he brought it for a carbon Pesach. Rabbi Yeshua says you're going to be potter. Ta b'dvar mitzvah. If you by mistake were machal Shabbos and you brought this carbon, which was really not a carbon Pesach, but you thought it is, you're going to be potter. That's what Rabbi Yeshua says. So now, says the Gemara, V'i ba'oiker, but if we're talking about a person that's intentionally thinking the wrong kavanah, he's intentionally taking a carbon. He knows it's a shlomim. He knows it's not a Pesach, and he's intentionally thinking that I'm going to bring it for the Pesach. So then, my lira uyin, Why is there any distinction if it's an animal that's fit for a carbon Pesach or if an animal that's not? What difference does it make? What's Rabbi Shua saying? Rabbi Shua is saying that he thought he's doing a mitzvah and therefore he's going to be potter because he was busy doing a mitzvah. But if he knows what it is and he intentionally is bringing it for the wrong carbon, he's not thinking he's doing a mitzvah. He knew it was a shlomim. And still, he takes this shlomim and brings it for a Pesach. So how is Rabbi Shua saying that he would be potter because he thought he's doing a mitzvah? Elo. So then, what are we going to have to say? Pshita, it's obvious. Betoya. In this case, where Rabbi Shua says he would be potter, the reason he's potter because the person made a mistake. He took this animal, it looked like a carbon Pesach, and he thought he's bringing a carbon Pesach. That's why he's going to be potter from a chatas. He's a toy b'dvar mitzvah. So if so, it would come out reishe ba'oiker. The first case in the Mishnah is talking about a person that's intentionally having the wrong machshava and he's bringing a Pesach for something else. And v'seife b'toya. And the second case of the Mishnah, where it says that Rabbi Shua says you're potter, it's speaking about a person that's mistakenly. He's mistakenly bringing a different carbon for a Pesach, and therefore he's tar b'dvar mitzvah. So the Reisha and the Seifa are two different cases. Rab Avin said yes, in Reisha ba'oikev, the Seifa b'taya. The Reisha is a person that's intentionally having the wrong machshava, and the Seifa, it's mistakenly done. Ashkeche Rab Yitzchak by Yosef l'Rabavo. He found Rabavo, the Havakoi ba'ochlese de inchi. He was standing amongst a group of many people, and Amalei Masnitin Mai, he asked Rabavo, tell me, what's the pshat in our Mishnah? What's the case of the Reisha? What's the case of the Seifa? Amalei, and Rabavo told him the same thing. Reisha ba'oiker. The Reisha is a person that intentionally had the wrong machshava, and over there I say that it uproots its status. And the Seifa b'toya. And the Seifa where Yeshua says he's potter because he was a tar b'dvar mitzvah is talking about a person that made a mistake. He thought he's bringing a carbon Pesach. So then he heard this pshat in the Mishnah, which is very unusual, that you have a Reisha and a Seifa, that it's talking about two different cases. So he wanted to review it many times to remember this. Tana minei arba and zimnin, he reviewed it 40 times. V'dami lei kemandamancha bekisei. And it was as if he had it in his pocket, that he had it clear, he understood that this is the case of our Mishnah. Now the Gemara goes on to the next case of the Mishnah, to continuation of the discussion between Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Shua to see whether this works with the continuation of the Mishnah. Tanan, so the Mishnah afterwards says, Rabbi Eliezer says, I'll prove to you my opinion that if a person brings a different carbon for the sake of a Pesach, and he thought it's a Pesach, that he would be chayiv. That's Rabbi Eliezer's opinion. So Rabbi Eliezer says, I'll bring you a kal v'chomer. Ma im Pesach. If in the first case of the Mishnah, if there's a carbon Pesach, shemutter l'shmai, that's allowed to be brought on Shabbos if it's brought for the sake of the carbon Pesach. Keshashina as shemai, if he had the wrong intention and he brought it for something else, chayev. He'll be chayev a carbon chatas for that. Zvachim, if there's any other carbon, shlomim, shehein asurin, Lishman, which are not allowed to be brought on Shabbos Lishma. Keshashina as Shemon, if he changed it and brought it for the wrong sake, he brought it for a Pesach, Ein Edin Shiei Chayev, for sure he should be Chayev a carbon Chatos. This is a carbon Shlamim that's B'chlal not allowed to be brought on a Shabbos. So this kind of a carbon, for sure he should be Chayev a carbon Chatos for bringing it on Shabbos. That was the Kal V'chomer he made. So he's taking the Reisha of the Mishnah, he's making Kal V'chomer from the Reisha of the Mishnah, that if in the Reisha of the Mishnah he's Chayev a carbon Chatos, in the case where he brought a carbon Pesach for the intention of a different carbon, for sure if you brought a carbon Shlamim on Shabbos for the intention of a Pesach, a carbon Shlamim doesn't push off Shabbos at all, for sure you should be Chayev a carbon Chatos. That was his Kal V'chomer. Now says the Gemara, how is he comparing the case of the Reisha to the case of the Seifa? V'im Isa, but if what we said before is true, Holedami Reisha, Holedami, they're not the same b'chlal. The Reisha ba'oiker, in the first case of the Mishnah, we're talking about a person that's bringing a Pesach and he's intentionally having a machshava for a different carbon. So over there, I could understand that he's chayav a carbon chatos because he's intentionally thinking for something else. And the Seifa b'toya, but the Seifa of the Mishnah is talking about a person that made a mistake. He saw a carbon, it looked like a carbon Pesach, and really it was a Shlomim, and he brought it thinking that it's a Pesach, so he made a mistake. So how does Rabbi Eliezer compare the case of the Seifa, where the person makes a mistake, to the case of the Reisha, where the person did it intentionally? When he made a mistake, it's different. Over here there's a svara to say that he's tar b'dvar mitzvah. So what kind of a kal v'chomer is this if it's two totally different cases? Says the Gemara, le Rabbi Eliezer lo yishonile. Rabbi Eliezer holds there's no difference if you brought it with the wrong intention, whether it was intentionally with the wrong intention or it was a mistake. In other words, what the Gemara is saying is Rabbi Eliezer does not hold of this entire concept of Tov b'dvar mitzvah, that if you made a mistake as a result of trying to do a mitzvah, that's a reason to be potter of a karban chatas. He doesn't hold of that whole thing. So if he doesn't hold of that, if you brought it with the wrong kavana, you're going to be chayav a karban chatas. Because erev Pesach shechali is b'Shabbos, it's only doiche if you did it for the karban Pesach for the sake of the Pesach. And if not, you're going to be chayav a chatas. It makes no difference if it's intentionally or it's by mistake. You intended to do a mitzvah. He doesn't hold of the whole concept of Torah b'dvar mitzvah. So to him, it makes no difference. Gemara, so that's true according to Rabbi Eliezer. So it makes no difference. But li Rabbi Yeshua the shani lei, according to Rabbi Yeshua, it's obvious that we would have to say that Rabbi Yeshua holds that there is a difference if you have the wrong intention intentionally, or you're doing it by mistake. According to him, there's definitely a difference. Because according to him, only by mistake do you say that it's a Tov b'dvar mitzvah, that you thought you're doing a mitzvah, and therefore you'd be potter. So lishani lei, why doesn't Rabbi Yeshua give him this answer? Rabbi Yeshua should have pointed out to him, I don't hold of your kal v'chaimer, because in the Reisha, he did it intentionally with the wrong kavana, and in the Sefer, he did it by mistake. And he thought he's doing a mitzvah. Why doesn't Rabbi Yeshua give this answer? If you look in the Mishnah, Rabbi Yeshua gives a different answer, as the Gemara is going to quote over here. Why doesn't he give this answer? Says the Gemara, you're right. Hachi ka'amar. Hachi ka'amale. This is what he was telling him. Lididi, according to my opinion, loy dami reisha ba'oike v'seife b'toya. I don't agree to your whole kavachaymer because the reisha is where he intentionally brought it for the wrong carbon. So there he's chayav achatos. And the seife, he made a mistake. So since he made a mistake, therefore he's a Tov b'dvar mitzvah. So I don't hold of your whole kavachaymer. But lidi doch, even according to your opinion, I can give you a reason why your kavachaymer is not good. Loi, I don't accept your kavachaymer because im amrit bepesach sheshines shmoi ledavar aser. By the carbon pesach over there, he took a carbon pesach which could push off Shabbos, but he had a wrong intention for something which is aser, to be brought on Shabbos. He thought that he's bringing it for a shlamim. That's why he brings a carbon chatas. Toima bezvachim. However, if a person takes another carbon, a carbon shlamim, for example, sheshines shmon ledavar hamuter, and he thought that he's bringing a carbon pesach, so his intention was for the right thing, for a carbon pesach. So over here, there's more of a svara that the person should be potter of a carbon chatas, and not like you said that there's a kavachayim that because it's a different carbon, therefore you should be chayav chatas. No, here he had the right intention for a carbon pesach. So Rabbi Yeshua only brought this to explain that even according to you, Rabbi Eliezer, you should be potter of a carbon chatas in this case. But according to his own opinion, the distinction between the Reisha and the Sefer is simple. In the Reisha, he did it intentionally, and in the Sefer, he did it by mistake, and therefore he's potter of a carbon chatas. The Gemara goes on now to the next case in the Mishnah, where it brought the continuation of the discussion where Rabbi Eliezer tried to prove his opinion. Amalei Rabbi Eliezer says, I'll prove my opinion, that if you bring another carbon, thinking that it's a carbon pesach, you still have a carbon chatas for that. So Rabbi Eliezer said, a murei tzibur yechichu. I'll bring you a raya from the karbonis tzibur that are allowed to be brought on Shabbos or Yom Tov. For example, the carbon tomid, carbon musif, that could be brought on Shabbos or Yom Tov. Shehein mutar lishman. If you brought them for their sake, it's allowed. V'hashaykhet lishman. But if an individual comes along and shechts any other carbon thinking that it's a carbon tomid or it's a carbon musif, chayiv, you'll be chayiv for that. Even you, Rabbi Yeshua, is going to agree that you'll be chayiv for that, even though he thinks he's doing it for the sake of a mitzvah, but you'll be chayiv for that. Amalei Rabbi Yeshua answers him and says, there's no comparison to the case of a person by mistake thinking that he's bringing it for a carbon pesach. Loi, there's no comparison. If you're telling me a person that's bringing a carbon, and he's thinking he's bringing it for a carbon tzibor, shekain yashlan kitzvah. Over there, the carbon sibor, there's a set amount. There's 2 karbanis tamid every day. There's a certain number of karbanis musaf that you brought on Shabbos or Yom Tiv. So the person should know that his individual carbon that he's bringing is not for that. How is he making such a mistake? So over here, he's not a tov b'dvar mitzvah. Toima b'Pesach. On the other hand, when it comes to the carbon Pesach, there's thousands or maybe even millions of karbanis Pesach that are being brought on Erev Pesach. She'ein like kitzvah. There's no number. There's no specific number of how many is brought. So if there's one animal that this person found in the vicinity of the Azara, and it's the same animal that's brought for a Pesach, it's Roy for a Pesach, and he made a mistake and he brought it for a Pesach, even though it was a Shlomim, that's a Tah B'Dvar mitzvah. He thought that it's being brought for the sake of a mitzvah. So there's no comparison to that case. That's what it said in the Mishnah. Says the Gemara, so lememre, should I say, based on what the Mishnah is saying here, the chol heichet, the islay kitzvah, anytime you have a case of a mitzvah, but the mitzvah has a set amount of what the mitzvah is, mechayiv Rabbi Yeshua. Rabbi Yeshua would say that even if a person made a mistake and he thought he's doing a mitzvah, he'll still be chayiv for being mechal Shabbos b'shegig, because it's a mitzvah that has a set amount. Should we say that that's Rabbi Yeshua's opinion? But the question is, v'harei tinoike. So here the Gemara brings up another case where Rabbi Yeshua and Rabbi Eliezer argued regarding this subject of Tah B'Dvar mitzvah. What's that case? The case of a bris. The case where you have two babies that a bris has to be done for them. The yeshlan kitzvah. So it's a case where the mitzvah that has to be fulfilled has a set amount. There's just one baby that the mitzvah has to be done with. And the Gemara brings the Mishnah in Masechta Shabbos. Tanan, what does it say in the Mishnah Masechta Shabbos? Mi shahoyeloi shnei tinoikis. A person had two babies to make a bris for them. Let's say we're talking about twins. One was born on Friday, and one was born after Shkir, after Etzeis, and it's Shabbos. So you have two babies to make a bris for them. Echad l'mayloi, or actually the Mishnah starts with the other case, a case where one was born on Shabbos and one was born on Sunday. So one baby, the bris has to be done on Shabbos, and one has to be done on Sunday. Echad l'mayloi achara Shabbos. One, the bris is on Sunday, ve'echad l'mayloi b'Shabbos, and one, the bris is on Shabbos. And v'shachach, and he made a mistake, umal es shel achara Shabbos b'Shabbos. You made the bris of the baby that has to be done on Sunday, and you made that bris on Shabbos. So you're sort of a Tah B'Dvar mitzvah. You wanted to do a mitzvah, but you confused the two babies, and you made the bris on the wrong baby. Chayiv, you're going to be chayiv for this, a carbon chatas, for being mechal Shabbos b'sheigig, and this is even according to Rabbi Yeshua, and the reason is because you made a mistake and you didn't actually end up doing a mitzvah. If you make a bris for a baby before the 8th day, it's not a mitzvah, so you didn't do any mitzvah at all, so you're chayiv. Well, how about if it's another case? Echad l'mayloi be'erev Shabbos. One baby, the bris has to be done on Friday. Ve'echad l'amul b'Shabbos. And another bris, the baby has to be done on Shabbos. The bris of the baby has to be done on Shabbos. V'shochach umal es shel erev Shabbos b'Shabbos. And by mistake, you made the bris for the erev Shabbos baby on Shabbos. So over here, you made a mistake. You did the bris for the wrong baby on Shabbos. The Friday bris is not Doiche Shabbos. Only a bris bizmano on the 8th day is Doiche Shabbos. So you made the bris for the Friday baby on Shabbos. Rabbi Eliezer mechayev chatos. Rabbi Eliezer says you're still chayev chatos even though you made a mistake, and you're doing it in a mitzvah here, but still you're chayev chatos, right? That's Rabbi Eliezer's opinion that even if you Tah B'Dvar mitzvah, you're chayev chatos. But Rabbi Yeshua pater, and Rabbi Yeshua says you're going to be potter. Why are you potter? Because you did a mitzvah. Even though it's not Doiche Shabbos, because it's not the Zman of the mitzvah, it's not the 8th day for this baby, but it's after the 8th day. If you make the bris after the 8th day, it's a mitzvah, so you're potter. So what do you see right over here? You have a case where you have two babies, and there's a kitzvah. It's very set what the mitzvah is. And nevertheless, Rabbi Yeshua is saying that if you made a mistake in the mitzvah, you're going to be potter from a chatas. And in our Mishnah it says that the only reason why by the carbon Pesach you're going to be potter of a chatas is because there's thousands or millions of karbanis and there's ein loy kitzvah, and therefore the person makes a mistake. And says the Gemara, Omer Rabami, says Rabami, no, here there's another reason why Rabbi Yeshua would also hold that you potter. The case over here is shekodam umal es shel erev Shabbos b'Shabbos. When you made the bris of the baby on Shabbos, so you first made the bris for the baby of a Friday on Shabbos. The ikke hach the Shabbos, the tared base, the bris of the right baby that was supposed to be done on Shabbos, you didn't make that bris yet. So you're tared, you're preoccupied, you're trying to do a mitzvah. You're tared in a mitzvah. So therefore, you ended up doing the wrong mitzvah, but as long as you were tared in trying to do the right mitzvah of the right baby, so then Rabbi Yeshua would say that you're going to be potter from a carbon chatas, because you still had the mitzvah to do the bris for the baby that was the Shabbos baby, that the mitzvah was, the bris was supposed to be done for that baby. However, in our Mishnah, you know why Rabbi Yeshua is going to say that you're going to be potter if a person goes ahead and brings a carbon tamid or a carbon musaf, thinking that he's doing a mitzvah. The carbon tamid was brought already. The carbon musaf was brought already. And now this person comes along and is bringing another carbon, thinking that he's bringing it for a carbon tamid or for a carbon musaf. That was brought already. It's done. That mitzvah is done. So you can't say that you're taught to doing that mitzvah if that mitzvah was done already. So the Gemara is explaining the distinction a bit differently than what we said before. The point is that in our Mishnah, the case has to be that the carbon tamid and musaf was brought already, so there's no tirda anymore. So if a person then goes ahead and brings any other carbon for that sake, you can't say that he's taught in a mitzvah. Mashenkin, by the case of the bris, the baby, or the Shabbos baby, that the bris was supposed to be done, was not done yet. So when he goes and does the bris for the baby, that's the Friday baby, he was taught in doing a mitzvah. So therefore he's going to be potter. Says the Gemara, so now coming back to our Mishnah. So what are you telling me? What is our Mishnah talking about? He already brought the karbanis tzibur, the carbon tamid, carbon musaf. That's done already. So he's not taught in a mitzvah anymore. So now ihachi, if so, there's another opinion in our Mishnah. What did it say after this? Rab Meir says, afa shoichet l'shem emurei tzibur potter. Even a person that went and brought a carbon, thinking that he's bringing it for a carbon tzibur, for the carbon tamid or musaf, he's also going to be potter. That's Rab Meir's opinion. So now, what does this mean? Are you going to tell me that Rab Meir holds this, even if the carbon tamid and the carbon musaf was brought already, and there's no tirda of that mitzvah anymore, but nevertheless, because he made a mistake and thought he's bringing it for that sake, he'll still be potter? Is this going to be Rab Meir's opinion? That's a tremendous chiddush. Rab Meir holds there's no tirda of a mitzvah anymore, but nevertheless, if he thought he's bringing it for that sake, he's still going to be potter. So the Gemara brings a braisa where it quotes Rab Meir's opinion, and it seems to say otherwise. Tanya, but we learned in the Braisa, Rab Chia me Oval Rav, Rab Chia from the place Oval Rav said, Rab Meir said that Lo nechlaku. So now this goes back again to the case of the bris, and here Rab Meir quotes the machlokes of Rab Eliezer and Rab Yeshua regarding the two babies in the bris differently than before. So he said as follows: Lo nechlaku, Rab Eliezer and Rab Yeshua. Rab Eliezer and Rab Yeshua do not argue regarding the bris of these babies. Al shahoyu lo shnei tinoikis, when he had these two babies, echad lamol erev Shabbos, and one is the bris of erev Shabbos, and the echad lamol b'Shabbos, and the other one is the bris of Shabbos. V'shachach, and he made a mistake. Umal es shel erev Shabbos b'Shabbos, and he made the bris of the erev Shabbos baby on Shabbos. The chayiv. Everybody agrees that in such a case he's going to be chayiv. So in this case, nobody will argue that he's going to be chayiv. Now, what's the pshat in this braisa? Why would he be chayiv if he made the bris of the erev Shabbos on Shabbos? According to everybody, he's a Torah b'dvar mitzvah, and when he made the bris for that erev Shabbos baby on Shabbos, he's doing a mitzvah, isn't he? So why would he be chayiv according to Rabbi Yeshua? So at this point, as Rashi explains, the Gemara is thinking the case over here is you have two babies, you have the Shabbos baby and you have the erev Shabbos baby. But what happened is he made the bris for the Shabbos baby first. And that bris was done already. And then he went ahead and also made the bris of the Erev Shabbos baby on Shabbos. Once he made the bris of the Shabbos baby, he's not taught in a mitzvah anymore. He already did the mitzvah of today. The mitzvah that was intended for Shabbos, that was done already. So now when he does the bris of the Erev Shabbos baby, so then he's not taught in a mitzvah, so therefore everybody holds you would be chayiv. This is what Rab Meir is saying here. So this is what the question of the Gemara is going to be based on, that in the first section of this braisa, I see here, once you did the mitzvah, and now you go ahead and you do another bris, which is not the mitzvah of today, so everybody holds that you're going to be chayiv. You're not taught in a mitzvah anymore. Alma nechluku. So Rab Meir says, when is their argument? Al shahoyu l'shtei tinoikis, when you have two babies, echad lamol achar Shabbos, one is the Sunday bris, ve'echad lamol b'Shabbos, and one is the Shabbos bris, v'shachach umal es shel achar Shabbos b'Shabbos, and you made the bris of the Sunday baby on Shabbos. The Rab Eliezer mechayiv chatos. Rab Eliezer says you're going to be chayiv, and Rab Yeshua paiter, and Rab Yeshua says you're going to be pater. So the pshat in the second case of this brisa would be, according to what the Gemara is thinking now, that even though when he's making the bris on Shabbos of the Sunday baby, he did not actually do a mitzvah. He's making the bris a day too early, so there was really no mitzvah done. But nevertheless, the case of the seifa of this brisa was that he did not make the bris for the Shabbos baby yet. he made the bris for the Sunday baby before the Shabbos baby. So therefore it comes out that when he was doing the bris for the Sunday baby, he was tared b'mitzvah. He still had the obligation to do the bris for the baby that had to be done today. So because he was tared in the mitzvah, Rabbi Yeshua says he'll be potter, even though he didn't end up doing a mitzvah. So what's the point? What do you see from here? What's the Gemara's question? From the Reisha of the Mishnah, I see that according to Rav Meir, as long as the mitzvah of the Shabbos baby was done already, if you then did the bris of the Friday baby, which is also a mitzvah, but it's not intended for today, you're going to be chayiv, because the mitzvah for today was done already. If so, the Gemara's question is, how could Rab Meir say b'negeh to the karbanos that even after the carbon tamid and the musaf was brought, if you then went ahead and brought another carbon for that sake, that you would be potter? Once it's done, if the mitzvah is already done, so then how could you say you're going to be potter? If over here it says, according to Rab Meir, that everybody would hold the chayiv once the mitzvah of the day was done already. Says the Gemara, we're going to have to change the pshat in this braisa, because to learn this pshat in the braisa doesn't really make sense. V'tizbere, is this a svara to learn the braisa this way? Ma hasam d'loy ovid mitzvah potter Rabbi Yeshua, if in the seif of this braisa, when he ended up doing the bris of the Sunday baby on Shabbos, so there was no mitzvah that was actually done, and Rabbi Yeshua says he's potter. Heiche de ka'ovid mitzvah mechayev, in the ratio of this mitzvah, when the mistake that he made was that he made the bris for the Friday baby on Shabbos, are you going to say that then he's going to be chayev? True, it's not the baby that the bris is supposed to be done today, but the fact is, when you do the bris of a Friday baby on Shabbos, a mitzvah is done. So if Rabbi Yeshua on the seif is saying you're potter, even when you didn't end up doing a mitzvah, you're going to tell me that in the ratio when he ended up doing a mitzvah he's going to be chayev? How could you say such a thing? So the pshat in this braisa can't be the way we learned it. The Gemara is going to give a new pshat, and this will answer the question that we had on the Rab Meir. So Omri the Bei Rabbi Yanai, in the yeshiva of Rabbi Yanai, they said that the pshat in this braisa is as follows. The reisha of this braisa is kagon shekodam umal shel Shabbos be'erev Shabbos. The mistake of the person didn't start on Shabbos. The mistake started on Friday. On Friday, he already made the bris of the Shabbos baby on erev Shabbos. So now, if that's the case, the bris of the Shabbos baby is done on Friday already. Shalei nitna Shabbos litchos. When you come to Shabbos, you don't have any baby to be doiche Shabbos. There's no inyan to be doiche Shabbos b'chlal, because the bris of Shabbos was done already. So therefore, in the Reisha he says, if you did the bris for the Friday baby on Shabbos, the reason why everybody agrees you're going to be chayev for that is because there's no baby here that would be doiche Shabbos. The Shabbos baby was done already, the bris was done already on Friday. And the Seife, nitna Shabbos litchai setzlei. The case in the Seife is you had a Shabbos baby and you had a Sunday baby. So when Shabbos comes, Shabbos could be pushed off for a bris. So therefore, when the person did even the Sunday baby on Shabbos, although he didn't end up doing a mitzvah, but there is a baby here to be doiche Shabbos. And therefore that's enough of a reason for you to be potter. That's the case, that's the pshat in this braisa. So if so, this is Rab Meir's opinion. Now we apply the same thing regarding a person that brings something for a carbon tamid. So hacha, when it comes to a person that brings a carbon on Shabbos or on a Yom Tov for a carbon tzibur, hare nitna Shabbos litchais eitzel carbon tzibur. Even if the carbon tzibur was brought already, so l'chayri doesn't have that mitzvah anymore, but the Shabbos is pushed off for that. So if the Shabbos is pushed off for that, even if that mitzvah was done already, if you then go ahead and bring another carbon for that sake, you're going to be potter. So this is the klal of Rab Meir's opinion. As long as you have a mitzvah that pushes off the Shabbos for the sake of that mitzvah, if you mistakenly do something else and think that you're doing that mitzvah, you're going to be potter. But if it's a case that Shabbos is not pushed off, like by the bris, the Shabbos baby was done already on Friday, so there's nothing to push off the Shabbos, so then you're going to be chayev according to everybody. Amalei Rav Ashi l'Rav Kahana, but Rav Ashi asked a question on this pshat. Hachanami, shouldn't we say over here as well? Harei nitna Shabbos litchais eitzel tinoikis da'alma. even if you already did the bris for the Shabbos baby on Friday, so you don't have a baby right here that a bris should be done for it on Shabbos. It was already done, but Shabbos you are deicha bris for any baby on Shabbos. So you don't have a baby right here, but Shabbos is a time where it does push off. Shabbos does get pushed off for the sake of a mitzvah of a bris. So why should we say that that's enough of a reason that if you made the bris for the Friday baby on Shabbos, that you should be potter for that? Amalei, so Rav Kahana answered him that legabe the high gavra miyas lo yisyav. But this person does not have any baby right now to make a bris for it on Shabbos. True, Shabbos in general is pushed off for the sake of a bris, but not for this person. He already made the bris for the Shabbos baby on Friday. So therefore, when he's toya and he makes the bris for the Friday baby on Shabbos, there's no mitzvah that he has to push off Shabbos. So therefore, he'll be chayiv in this according to everybody. Coming back to the Mishnah. Now the Gemara quotes again what it said in the Mishnah regarding the karbanis that were brought on Erev Pesach, Shechaliyas b'Shabbos, and you made a mistake. V'shar kol azvachim, any other karbanis, sheshachton l'shum Pesach, you shechted them for the sake of the Pesach. Im einon re'uyin, if you're talking about an animal that couldn't have been brought for a Pesach, so then chayiv. Everybody agrees you would be chayiv because the person sees clearly it can't be brought for a Pesach. But vim re'uyin, if there was an animal that was not a carbon Pesach, and you thought it's a Pesach, it looked like a carbon Pesach, so then Rabbi Eliezer chayiv chatos. Rabbi Eliezer says you still chayiv chatos for that. But Rabbi Yeshua paiter. Rabbi Yeshua says you pater because you were taught b'dvar mitzvah. You thought that you're bringing a carbon Pesach. Man tana d'shanile ben ruyin l'shein and ruyin. Who is the opinion that says that we make a distinction between whether it's an animal that could be brought for a Pesach or an animal that can't? So it depends if the person got confused or not. Rab Shimoni, this is the opinion of Rab Shimon. The Tani we learned in the Braise that there's an opinion of Rab Meir. Rab Meir does not make this distinction. Rab Meir says, Echad azvachem re'uyin, ve'echad zvachem she'enon re'uyin. If there's an animal there, whether it was fit to be brought for a Pesach, whether it's an animal that's not fit to be brought for a Pesach, and v'chein ha'sheichet l'shem murei tzibur, and like Rab Meir said in our Mishnah, even a person that shechted a carbon, and he thought that he's bringing it for a carbon tzibur that can be brought on Shabbos and Yontif, potter. He'll be potter. He's considered to be a ta'ah b'dvar mitzvah. Divrei Rab Meir, that's Rab Meir's opinion. Rab Shimon, but Rab Shimon said no. Lo nachluku, Rab Eliezer, Rab Yeshua. The argument regarding this subject of ta'ah b'dvar mitzvah, when was this? Only al she'enon ru'uyin. Again, they're not arguing al she'enon ru'uyin shechayiv regarding an animal that was not fit at all for the carbon Pesach. Nobody would disagree about this. Everybody would agree that you would be chayiv because over here you see that it's not for a carbon Pesach, so you're not a ta'ah b'dvar mitzvah. Alma nechluku. What are they arguing about? Al ru'uyin. Only when it's an animal that could have been brought for a carbon Pesach. Rabbi Eliezer mechayiv chatos, but Rabbi Yeshua paiter. In such a case, Rabbi Eliezer says you're still going to be chayiv, and Rabbi Yeshua says you pater because the person could easily get confused and think that it's a carbon Pesach. This is the source of our Mishnah, Rab Shimon's opinion. Amar Rabbi Amar Rabbi Lazar. So Rabbi said in the name of Rabbi Lazar. Paiter hoy Rab Meir. When Rab Meir said that you're potter because you made a mistake, you thought it's a mitzvah. Afile egel shel zivchei shlomim. Even if it's a calf that was designated for a shlomim, and it's very clear an egel cannot be brought for a carbon Pesach. Carbon Pesach could only be brought either from a lamb or from a goat. So it's very clear that it can't be brought for a carbon Pesach, but nevertheless, Rab Meir says if you brought it as a Pesach, you would be potter, sheshachte l'shum ha-Pesach. If he brings it for a Pesach on Shabbos, he'll be potter, even in such a case. So Amalei Rab Zera le Rabbi Voy, but for Ha'amar Rab Yechanan, didn't Rab Yechanan say, Meide hoy Rab Meir bebale mumen? Rab Meir agreed that if it's an animal which is a bal mum, and you know that it can't be brought as a carbon, and you brought it for a carbon Pesach, then in such a case you're going to be chayiv. So isn't that the same like a person that's bringing an egel? He knows that it can't be brought for a carbon Pesach, so in such a case Rab Meir should be meidi chayiv. Amalei, so he answered him, no. The bale mumin loitarid behu. By a bal mum, you know it can't be brought for any carbon. So you're not eager to bring it as a carbon. You weren't planning and thinking and trying to bring it as a carbon. But for hai tarid be. This animal, you know it can't be brought as a carbon Pesach, but you want to bring it as a carbon shlomim. So you're eager and trying to bring it as a carbon. So the fact that he made a mistake and brought it for a Pesach instead of a shlomim, according to Rab Meir, is still considered to be ta'ah b'dvar mitzvah. Rav asked another question. How about chulin l'shem Pesach? You had an animal that was totally chulin. It wasn't a carbon at all. And you made a mistake and you brought this for a Pesach. Mali Mali Amar Rab Meir. What's going to be Rab Meir's opinion regarding this? Amalei, so he answered him, Poite hoya Rab Meir. Rab Meir would say that you would be potter, you consider to be an oisek b'dvar mitzvah, afile chulin l'shem Pesach. Even if your mistake is that you brought a chulin for the sake of a Pesach. So again, the Gemara asks the question, what's the distinction? V'ha'amar Rab Yechanan, Maida hoya Rab Meir b'bali mumin. If you're bringing a bal mum as a carbon Pesach, Rab Meir is maida that you're not an oisek b'dvar mitzvah, you know that it can't be brought as a carbon. So why don't we say the same thing by chulin? You know that chulin can't be brought as a carbon. Answers the Gemara, Bali Mumin le Michlafi. By a Balmum, you can't make a mistake to exchange the animal. You see it has a Balmum, it has a mum. You know it can't be brought as a carbon. But Hani, an animal which is Chulin, Michlafi, it could get confused with another animal that is a carbon. It doesn't have a mum. It could look like that animal that you makdish as a carbon. You could make a mistake. Sagt the Gemara, v'taime the Rab Meir mishum yichlufi v'lo yichlufi. Is that the basis of Rab Meir's opinion that you're going to be potter from a carbon chatas because you were taught b'dvar mitzvah, and the reason is because you could confuse this animal with the animal that was supposed to be the carbon of the mitzvah. But v'ha'amar Rav Bevi Amar Rab Elazar, Paita hoya Rab Meir afile egel shel zivchei shlomim sheshachter l'shoma Pesach. That Rab Meir patted when you're bringing an egel that was designated for a shlomim and you brought it for a Pesach. That's when Rab Meir said that you potter. Alma, what do I see from there? Time that Rab Meir mishum the torid. The reason of Rab Meir why you potter is not because you could confuse it. In that case, you can't confuse anything. But the reason of Rab Meir is because you were torid. You wanted to bring it as a carbon shlomim, and by mistake you brought it as a Pesach. So what's the reason of Rab Meir? Is the reason of Rab Meir that you potter because you could exchange it easily? Or is the reason of Rab Meir because you taught it to bring it? Amalei, so he told him both are true. Tarid afagav dolei michlaf. If you have an animal that you were taught to bring it for a carbon shlomim, and then you bring it for a carbon pesach, you're going to be potter for that because you were taught to do a mitzvah. And michlaf afagav dolei tarid. And then you're also going to be potter when you exchange it for something else, when it's a chulin, even though you're not taught to do a mitzvah. La'afuke bali mumin, the only case that Rab Meir says you're going to be potter, you're going to be chayev, that is, because you know that it can't be brought as a carbon, is if it's bali mumin, dolei ichlef or michlef, if it's a bal mum, so there's no reason you should exchange it with a carbon that could be brought, and v'lei mitra tarit, and there's no reason you should be taught in doing a mitzvah because you know that it can't be brought as a mitzvah. Now the Gemara brings a machlokes Ameiraim, or a discussion of Ameiraim regarding this subject of Tah b'dvar mitzvah. Yosef, Rab Zeir, Rab Shmuel, Rab Yitzchak, Akila, Rab Shmuel, Rab Yitzchak. So Rab Zeir and Rab Shmuel, Rab Yitzchak were sitting on the porch of Rab Shmuel, Rab Yitzchak. V'Yosvi, v'Ka'amri, and they were sitting, they were repeating the following statements of Ameiraim. That Omer Rab Shemi ben Lakish, Reish Lakish said, if a person wants to eat from the karbonis, and by mistake, instead of eating from a shpud, from a spit that has roasted meat that's allowed to be eaten, he by mistake ate from naisar, which is not allowed to be eaten. So he was a tah b'dvar mitzvah. He tried to do a mitzvah, but instead he ate something which is naisar, v'achle, and he ate it. Chayiv, you're going to be chayiv achatos. If you eat a naisar b'shegeg, you're chayiv achatos. Even though he thought he's eating the right thing, he's going to be chayiv. And the reason is because he didn't end up doing a mitzvah at all. He ate naisar. He wanted to do a mitzvah, but he ate naisar, so he didn't end up doing a mitzvah at all. So he's chayav achatos. Rabbi Yechanan said regarding a different case, Ishtoi nida boal. A person had a relation with his wife that was a nida. Chayiv is going to be chayav achatos as well. And the Gemara will soon explain that we're talking about a case that this was not a mitzvah at all, so therefore he's going to be chayiv. Yevimtoi nida bal, but if he has a relation to a yevame where it is a mitzvah to have a relation with her, at least the first time, this is the mitzvah of the yibum, so then she was a nida, so he wasn't allowed to have the relation with her. So potter, he'll be potter of achatas because he did a mitzvah. So now, Ikke the Amri, there are those that said, regarding what Rabbi Yechanan said, that Kol Shekain Bahahi, the Mechayev, the Le'asa mitzvah, that Rabbi Yechanan over here is saying, that you're going to be chayev by a person that was boil his wife that was a nida, for sure regarding the case, when he ended up eating naisar, for sure he's going to be chayev because he didn't do a mitzvah at all. When a person has a relation with his wife, so Rashi says, there's somewhat of a mitzvah involved in this, to one degree or another. But when a person ended up eating naisar, there's no mitzvah in that whatsoever. So for sure over there, he would be chayev. Ista Amri, others said the opposite. Bahi Potter. In the case where he ended up eating naisar, Rabbi Yechanan would hold that he would be Potter. My timer, what's the reason? Hasam hu dahavelei l'shiyuli. When a person had a relation with his wife and she was a nida, the reason why he's going to be chayav achatas is because you should have asked her. So even though you were doing something, and this could be somewhat of a mitzvah involved in this, but why didn't you ask her if she's a nida or not? When a person is eating the meat of a carbon, he thinks he's eating the meat of a carbon, but he ends up eating naisar, he has nobody to ask. So in such a case, he's a Torah b'dvar mitzvah and he'll be potter. Fragt the Gemara. Now, for Rabbi Yochanan made a distinction if it's your wife or if it's a Yavama. If a person has a relation with a Yavama, so that's a mitzvah, and therefore he's potter, even though she's a nida. Ishtoi nami kavod mitzvah. Having a relation with his wife is also a mitzvah. There's a mitzvah of piri v'ribya, mitzvah to have children, so he's also doing a mitzvah. Answers the Gemara, be'ishtoi mu'beres, his wife is pregnant already, so he doesn't have that mitzvah. Fragt the Gemara, but v'ha'ike simchas aina. There is the mitzvah of the aina, the mitzvah that a person has to give his wife simcha, and therefore he also has a mitzvah, even if it's not for the mitzvah of piri v'ribya. Answers the Gemara, shaloi b'shasei nasa. It's not in the time where he has the obligation to be with his wife to give her simcha. As Rashi here brings, the Gemara in Nida, or in Ksubas actually says, the different times a person is obligated. So there's no mitzvah in this. Frag the Gemara, but it doesn't matter. V'ha'omar rove chayev adam l'sameach ishtoi b'dvar mitzvah. The person is obligated to be with his wife at any time. There's a mitzvah involved in this if she desires. So therefore there still is a mitzvah. So he's considered to be a Torah b'dvar mitzvah. Answers the Gemara, Samoch levesta. We're talking about a time where it's near the vest, near the time, the period where she's going to become a nida, and therefore in that time there is no mitzvah at all, and therefore this is not a Torah b'dvar mitzvah.
Even
So-
though she's moved back.
Correct. How is this possible? Samoch levesta, and she's mu'beres. And before the Gemara said it's mu'beres. Now, so in other words, the Gemara now is saying that she's not a mu'beres. So now the Gemara is having charata from that. She's not mu'beres, but it's samach levesta, and therefore there's no mitzvah of pirivirib at that time. So the Gemara, wait a minute, if we're talking about samach levesta, so there's no mitzvah, yihachi afili yevimtoi nami. Even by a yavama as well, if it's close to the time of her vest, so he's not allowed to have a relation with her either. So why is this a mitzvah? And for the Gemara, so the Gemara's question over here is that it's not a mitzvah there either. Says the Gemara, Yevimta buzzes mina. A Yevama, it's the first time he's having a relation with her. It's not his wife, and therefore he's embarrassed to ask her. Ishtoi loy buzzes mina. His wife, he's not embarrassed to ask her. So his wife, he should have asked her if it's near her vest or not. So therefore over here, by his wife, it's not considered to be a Torah b'dvar mitzvah. Mashenkin by the Yevama, it is considered to be a Torah b'dvar mitzvah because he did not want to ask her. He couldn't have asked her. He was embarrassed from her. But now the Gemara says that this statement of Rabbi Yochanan really has no source from any Tanoim. Okay, we'll leave this for tomorrow, Mitzvah Hashem. We'll see the Hemshech of the Gemara on this. Okay.